Jesus called his 12 disciples to him and gave them authority to drive out evil spirits and to heal every disease and sickness.
The Bible contains remarkable stories of miracles and divine interventions. Moses parted the sea. Peter healed a man lame from his mother's womb. Jesus drove demons out of people and raised others from the dead. But are these types of events still happening today?
We too have a beam of divine light and guidance that God has put within the heart of every man. And it's one of the greatest proofs that there is a God.
More amazing supernatural things are happening than we realize.
This is Divine Intervention, the interview show that features intriguing people who've experienced the hand of God in amazing ways. Divine Intervention was created and produced with the purpose of encouraging believers, spiritual seekers, and skeptics alike that Jesus is alive and is still performing miracles and working in the world today.
I believe in miracles.
Here's your host, Daniel Fazina.
Hello, friend, and welcome to Divine Intervention Radio. I am your host, Daniel Fazina. So excited, privileged, humbled, and just thrilled to be here with you. Thank you so much for taking time out of your busy schedule to join me to hear some testimonies of how the Lord is working in people's lives. Our website is divineinterventionradio.com. You can find all the episodes there. They're archived if you miss any of them. You can also check us out on YouTube, youtube.com/Divine Intervention Radio, and Facebook, facebook.com/Divine Intervention Radio. You can connect with me directly if you like. I'm at DanielFazina1 on Twitter.com. That's DanielFazina, the numeral 1 on Twitter.com. Well, today, before we get to today's special guests, I wanted to share a quick testimony with you. My 5-year-old daughter, Evangeline, loves to ask me at dinner time, especially, "Hey, Daddy, can you tell me a testimony? Can you tell me a testimony?" And I've told her so many, and she has made me rack my brain to think about all the amazing things God has done in my life. And one that she asked me about that I had forgotten about for quite a while was one that happened to me while I was in Rome, Italy. I was studying there. I was a student, study abroad student in 1996. I spent the fall over there, so about 3.5 months. And something happened to me that I really am grateful that the Lord protected me. He spoke to me, and I didn't pay attention to the voice, and I kind of tried to ignore it, and I almost got really seriously hurt because of that. But he protected me nonetheless. And the story goes like this, real quick in a nutshell. I was walking around the streets of Rome, and it was just about the time that I was going to be coming home. I had been there 3.5 months. It was probably just a couple of days before I was coming home. And if you know anything about Rome and Europe, it's a very old country there, Italy. It's got a lot of history. The streets a lot of them are cobblestone. They're very uneven. Everything is ancient. I mean, very, very old. And I was walking along the sidewalk, and I was thinking, Lord, thank you so much for protecting me and keeping me safe throughout this trip. It's a miracle that I didn't twist an ankle or break an ankle because the roads there are so uneven. And there's rocks and cobblestones jutting out all over the place, and the traffic is pretty crazy too. Anyway, I had just a moment of thanking God while I was walking, just saying, like I said, how it was a miracle that I didn't actually get hurt or twist an ankle or something. And as I was walking, I came to the sidewalk where I had to cross the street, and I couldn't find a safe place to cross because there were cars parallel parked along pretty much every inch of this road, and I needed to get across. And the traffic in Rome is pretty crazy. It's probably worse than anything I've seen here in the United States. But anyway, I was looking around. Finally, I saw a little gap between two parked cars, probably no more than 6 inches wide, maybe even less. And I was like, oh, I can just scoot through there. And right when I thought that, I heard a distinct impression in my spirit say, "Don't go there. Don't go through there." And I was like, "Oh, that's weird," but I needed to get across the street, and there was no other way that I could see to cross. I guess I could have walked down a few blocks and looked for a crosswalk, but I guess I was just too lazy and didn't want to do that, to go out of the way. So I'm like, nah, I can just go through there. And I heard it again, "Do not go through there." And I kind of brushed it off, and I was like, you know what, I'll be fine. So I went over to this gap between these two parked cars, and I literally had to turn sideways and scoot between them. And I was scooting my way through, inching my way through sideways, and as soon as I got through to the other side, I went from the sidewalk, like the curb side, and I went between these two bumpers of these two cars, parked cars, and as soon as I got my leg out into the street, and then I pulled my second leg out, all of a sudden the car in back of me lurched forward and slammed into the car in front. I mean, bam, like that. And I was like, oh my gosh, I jumped. I was so startled. And I turned around. Come to find out, there was a man sitting in the parked car, the rear parked car, which I hadn't noticed. And he, right when I was going through, he decided to start his car. And if you know anything about manual transmissions, if you leave them in gear and you try to start the car lunges forward. And that's what happened, apparently. He had left it in gear. He started the engine, and the thing lunged forward and smashed into the car in front of it. And I was so startled, I grabbed my chest, I whipped around, I looked, and he was startled too. He was like, "Oh my gosh, I'm so sorry." He's sitting in the driver's seat, and I literally missed my leg being crushed by probably less than a second. It was that close, and inches away. I was so startled, and I was just thanking God. I'm like, "Oh my gosh, Lord, thank you for getting me through there in time. I'm sorry I didn't listen to your voice." But yeah, it's just, there are so many times in life where you go through things where you're probably saved and didn't even know it. There are guardian angels all around. But that's one instance where I believe that, God tried to warn me, and somehow he held off the guy starting the car long enough for me to get my leg out from there. But yeah, it was just crazy. Anyway, I shared that with my daughter, and she was very impressed with that. And I just thought I would share it with you today in hopes that it would encourage you. All right, I've taken up enough time. Let's get to our special guests. We're going to be talking with two powerful women of God today. And the first is Joan Hunter, my old friend. She's got a healing ministry, and she goes all over the world, and she sees amazing miracles happen. And it's my pleasure to have her back on Divine Intervention right now. Her website is joanhunter.org. And this interview I actually recorded live on site at the National Religious Broadcasters Convention in Nashville, Tennessee. So there is a lot of background noise, so please excuse that. Excuse the audio quality as it was done on site, but I think you're really going to be encouraged by Joan's testimony. So let's go to that interview with Joan Hunter right now on Divine Intervention. Joan, you are on Divine Intervention Radio. Thank you so much for joining us.
Well, it's great to be back with you, Daniel. It's so awesome to be here, and it's neat to see, even though it's been a few years, to see what God has done in your life and my life, and what God's done, and et cetera, et cetera. It's great catching up.
It's awesome to have you and to see you in person and here on this very special live edition of Divine Intervention at NRB in Nashville, Tennessee. For those who are not familiar with you, can you tell us a bit about your background? You come from a ministry family. Tell us what that was like growing up for you, and how you came to know Jesus and got into ministry in the first place.
Well, my mom, most of you know, is Frances Hunter, was a wild, crazy sinner, and had an encounter about the age when I was 12, and I got a totally different mom the next day. She quit,
next day?
Literally, pretty much. She quit drinking, quit cussing, quit doing all kinds of stuff like that, and she was 100%, 110% kind of a person. So she in turn gave 110% to the devil, then got saved and gave, way more than 110% to God. And God totally transformed her life. I saw the difference in my mother, and I'm like, wow, this is pretty awesome. I want it. So at the age of 12 is when I said, I want this. And then so many times we can lead by examples like that and have totally transformed lives, to say the least. And Mom was 49 when she got saved, and so I'm at that point, I'm 12, and I'm like, I just gave my whole heart to the Lord. We just jumped in, and we started traveling around the Miami, Florida area and leading people to Jesus. And I took care of the kids while she went door to door and was just everybody had to get saved. She felt like the world was her responsibility.
Wow.
And so she went door to door, and I watched the kids, and she led the people to the Lord and taught them a little bit, and it's just amazing what God did. And then after that, she started writing a couple books, started traveling a little bit, and went to Houston, Texas, and met an amazing, wonderful man named Charles Hunter, who became my father, and I was 16 at that time. and so moved to Texas, and just mom was still traveling, dad was still a leading CPA for Houston, and so eventually he did full-time retire and was traveling with mom and dad. You know, as mom, like, it's hard to say mom or dad. It's just mom and dad. It just comes out together.
Right. And they had an amazing and a large ministry.
Yes, very huge healing ministry. Happy Hunters, yes. And then right after, 9 months after they were married, which is the first day legally that my dad could adopt me, so he adopted me.
That's amazing.
Yeah, so it's a neat story.
I can't imagine growing up in a life like that and seeing probably a lot of miracles happening almost on a daily basis, I would
Absolutely.
think. That's amazing.
Just hundreds of thousands of miracles and incredible miracles, creative miracles. And, you know, this weekend I've been in the Nashville area ministering, and it's been absolutely amazing. And we've seen hundreds of healings, just literally hundreds and hundreds of healings. And people were coming to hope to see one or two, and, you know, they themselves got about 8. You know, some of them got 10 or 20, and, you know, so it was pretty awesome.
That's great. What are some of the highlights of your more recent trips, and what kind of things have you seen?
Well, just this yesterday, literally just yesterday, and this lady was just totally, completely set free because of some of the teaching that I had taught about the difference between a soul tie and a covenant. And her ex-husband, after 25 years, was still coming into her thought life, into her life, and in her nightmares, and abusing her in her nighttime.
Oh my gosh.
And because of the covenant, and the covenant, not soul ties, but the covenant gives him the legal right to come in, because the covenant you share like you share with your wife. And when she got that revelation and prayed the prayer with me, all of a sudden it was like she was totally different. All the nightmares, all the night terrors, and all of the verbiage that he spoke to her for the short time that they were married literally was wiped out when she said that prayer. And and that's like really awesome. We had probably a dozen people healed of fibromyalgia instantly. A couple people healed of PTSD that served in the armed forces, and God's given me incredible ministry where PTSD is concerned, and veterans, and it's just awesome.
Wow, wonderful to see. My wife works at the VA hospital, and she sees a lot of people with PTSD and traumas of different sorts from being in tense situations, combat, things like that. So it's wonderful to see that the Lord is setting people free in those arenas.
Yeah.
Now you have a couple of books out, a couple of new books. We have Love Again, Live Again. Tell us about what that one is. The subtitle is Restore Your Heart and Regain Your Health. What's that all about?
Well, when your heart is broken, when you've had abuse, when you've had trauma, worry, all that kind of stuff, I did in the year 2000. Thought my life was over, and I got divorced. 2 days after divorce, I'm diagnosed with breast cancer.
Oh my goodness.
And the heartache, I believe, is what opens up the door for the breast cancer, not to mention broken heart syndrome. And so, long story short, which is covered in another book called Healing the Heart, is I went after God to heal my heart. I could care less about the cancer at that point, because it was my heart that needed healing. You can live without a breast, but you can't live with a broken heart. And it's so cool because how God was healing my heart and healing it. And then as a result of that, I went back to the oncologist to figure out what they recommend, and they couldn't find the cancer. It was totally gone. And so I teach how to starve your sicknesses to death and basically not get sick, which is like, that's the best part. God had to come up with healing because people started getting sick, you know, whereas originally it was planned that nobody would ever get sick, that they would live in, perfect housing and perfect life and perfect health, in the Garden of Eden. And sin came in, destroyed all that. And so this is it goes into another level of getting healed of broken heart syndrome, of betrayal, like serious heavy duty betrayal and different things in our hearts. Because see, when your heart is hurting, it brings on sickness, it brings on arthritis, osteoporosis, different things like that. And so people die young because they have a broken heart. And that's what's so important, is that they get free of broken heart. I've been diagnosed broken heart originally, broken heart syndrome, and I have now been cleared of any form of broken heart syndrome.
So broken heart syndrome is actually a real medical term?
Oh, yeah.
Okay.
Oh, very much so.
I didn't know that.
Yeah, it is. And it can actually kill you.
Wow.
Because of the stress and the trauma. And like when there's a lot of people would probably call it PTSD, but an emotional PTSD. And it can actually it destroys the heart. And life expectancy is shortened immensely, because of that.
If someone is going through like a divorce or they've suffered a massive betrayal or trauma, what would you recommend for them?
Well, number one, I'd recommend Healing the Heart book and Love Again, Live Again. And then in addition to that, I recommend them to call my office, because I have trained people there that will not just go, pray, and that type of thing. No, they're going to go in and they're going to really minister to people's heart to see them free. I knew what it was like not having anybody I could turn to in the year 2000. My book wasn't out then, obviously. I had no self-help books to help me. And those will help you walk out your healing. And, number one, you got to forgive. And with forgiveness, it means that what they did is still wrong, but you forgive them, and you're the one that actually gets set free.
Right.
You hold on to unforgiveness, all kinds of things can happen to your body and your mind. And the word says, as you forgive, you will be forgiven. So it's important that we forgive those who have hurt us. And once again, doesn't mean that now what they did was now right. No, it's wrong, and it will always be wrong.
I think that's a key point you bring out, in that a lot of people might not understand that forgiveness, and that when we forgive, we're saying, yes, it is wrong, but we're releasing you to Jesus. We're turning you over, because and
all that
Jesus,
pain to Him.
Right. He bore it on the cross, and He forgave us too, and we're supposed to forgive others. It's not an easy thing to do, but with God's help, it is possible. So tell us about this. You have another book now. It's called The Power of Prophetic Vision, How to Turn Your Dreams into Destiny. This sounds like a very juicy and interesting book. So tell us.
It's an amazing, amazing book. And what's so exciting is even both the books that we've been all my books have the potential of changing people's lives. Not if you buy it, but if you buy it and read it. Okay? And really apply what's in there. Okay? Yeah. And Power of Prophetic Vision, I've seen so many people have wasted their lives or wasting their lives. And the thing is I feel that there is a spirit of procrastination over the body of Christ, and they're not walking out their call. It may be because of health reasons. Number one reason is because of finances, and number two, literally right behind it, is I'm not good enough. And it's like, I would have prophetic words. You're going to have your own television program, and I'd kind of laugh. And I'm like, I got a great radio face, I don't have a great television face. And people would tell me that, even growing up.
I've been told that too from me.
Yeah. But what's funny is I said, God, if you want me to have TV, you need to change my face. And my complexion, everything literally has changed. But the more that my heart gets healed, which my heart is, I would say, completely healed, as I saw my heart getting healed, the years just went off my face, and I'm like right around the corner from 67.
Wow.
Yeah. So,
I would not have guessed that.
Right. And literally God has removed years off of me, especially in this last year, which is like really amazing. And I'm like, I'm how old? I can't be that old, but I have a daughter 43. I guess I am that old, And but the thing is, but when you get your heart healed and free of unforgiveness, it will totally take it off your face. And and I've had a television program now 3 successful years, and it's just amazing the outreach that it has, the miracles that are happening through it, called Miracles Happen, which is kind of my slogan for the ministry.
I love it.
And but the thing is, I had to get out of my comfort zone of staying back here, staying behind the book table, helping my mom and dad, and then for me to be in the pulpit, for me to have my own microphone, all that kind of stuff. That is a totally different person than I was 20 years ago. That's to say the least. But the thing is, God will take you from where you are to where He wants you, if you let Him. But we got to get out of our comfort zone. Comfort zone, where your dreams go to die, number one. Number two, your comfort zone can actually be like cement. way more than just quicksand. And God has so much more for you. You're put on this earth for a reason. And when you are aware of the fact of this reason, what it is, and live it, because I am living what I was born to do. Traveling, doing what I'm doing, writing books. And as soon as I sent one of them off, and just a couple weeks ago, he downloads another book, and I'm like, can I not have a day off from a book?
Deadlines are a cruel master, right?
And I've got, about 3 more books that publishers have asked me for, and I'm like, oh, this is just amazing. And it's just like flowing.
Well, if you make yourself available to him, he'll use you like that.
Absolutely.
Wonderful to see.
And see, the thing is, he gave me the download for Power of Prophetic Vision, and I did it. Okay, and it's in print now. And so because I've been faithful, that's actually book number 19.
Oh my goodness.
Yeah, really. And I've got 20 and 21 already being printed right now, okay, that are due out sometime this year. And but the thing is, it's like, I've been faithful with my first. I've been faithful with my second. And then all of a sudden they just started coming a lot faster. And they're all bestsellers. They're all doing amazingly well, which I'm very excited about.
I am too.
More than the book sales, I'm excited the testimonies that are coming in.
I wanted to ask you about that.
It's just amazing. Power Prophetic Vision. There was a lady that was chosen to do the Audible book on that. Mm-hmm. Okay, and I was in contact with her after she had read it, getting ready to record it. And in talking to her, she says, I had a list of things that I wanted God to answer for me. I read your book. Everything on this list was answered in that book.
Wow.
And so she was able to record it audibly and recording it with more power and excitement,
personal,
more personal because of what it did for her, knowing that as she read it, people are going to hear it and they're going to totally have their life completely changed.
I love it.
Which is really awesome. The book there's only 6 chapters, though they're strong chapters, and in the chapters, like one of them is coulda, shoulda, basically no regrets. When I die, I don't want to have any regrets that I didn't do something, and different things like that. Focus. We got to get into focus. People tried to make me into my mom, but God didn't want me to be my mom. He wanted me to be me.
Right.
And so we can try to be like our pastor, try to be like our leader, different things like that. But what God wants us to do, He wants us to be the best us we can be.
Right.
And I have a story. I have probably 50 stories because I was teaching it before I actually printed it. And so there was this lady that worked at my office, and she was in charge of our Canadian office. She was in charge of this. She was in charge of our United States data. You name it. She did all kinds of stuff. Travel with me, bilingual. She was amazing. And she still is an amazing person. And so I booked a couple of flights for her to travel with me, and she sends me a text, I need to talk to you and Melody. Melody is my daughter who helps me run the ministry. In the morning, I'm like, I don't want to talk to you because that sounds like you're going to quit. So she comes in, and she actually does resign. She'd been with me 6 years and very much a right-hand person to me. And she says, she loves it, loved working at the ministry, absolutely loved it, loved traveling, loved praying for the sick, loved doing everything that she did. And the thing is, it's like, she said, I got an advertisement, I'm going to be a flight attendant. And she goes, oh yeah, right, whatever. So she hits send. And out of 20, I think it was 27 applicants, they chose her. Now, this is from her words, okay? I'm too short, I'm too old, and I'm too fat. And they hired her. They hired her. Okay.
To be a flight attendant.
To be a flight attendant at 53.
Okay.
Okay. Now she's been doing it over a year and a half. And what was so neat, I didn't know this about her, but on the first flight, 23 years before, she had laid down the dream of ever becoming a flight attendant.
But that was her dream? She wanted to be a flight attendant?
That was her dream.
Okay.
And when she was in her 20s,
wow,
to be a flight attendant. And she has a daughter that is a model and photographer in New York, and that airline flies to New York, so she goes up there, spends the night, and she's got an awesome roommate, gets to hang out with her daughter, and then a son and grandchildren and everything over in Montana, so she can fly up there anytime she wants, and then she has some more family in Houston. miss her immensely. But she goes, it's all your fault. All your teaching. Walk out your destiny and stuff. It's all your fault,
Wow.
And, but it's so fun to see people. And we have a guy, his name is Jonathan Williams, and, encouraging him to do what God's called him to do. Phenomenal worship leader, traveled with another ministry, worked for them, was in charge of their video, audio, you name it. And his desire was to take pictures at the White House. Yeah, really, what? Okay, we can talk ourselves out of that.
Okay.
He had a fabulous paying job, and his wife had a couple of businesses. They were doing really good financially. They have 4 kids, and to move to Washington, D.C. out of Maricopa, Arizona, cost of living was like enormous.
Sure.
But you got to get a job first. It's like, sure, I want to take pictures of people in the White House, whatever. Okay, the likelihood of that is less than nil. Long story short, mainly because of time. He and his family, his wife, encouraged him the whole way, making 25% of what they were making.
Wow.
But God. And they're up there. They're all settled. They have a fabulous rental home, etc. And he is the photo editor for Mike Pence.
Wow.
And the photographer for Mrs. Pence. And so a couple of weeks ago, he says, "Well, we need you to go to Israel and Italy this week. Can you do that?" Oh, let me pray about it. Yes. So he got to go on the plane on AF2 with Mrs. Pence, take photos of her everywhere she was going in Israel and Italy, and then comes home all in a week's worth. He's living his dream.
And just because he stepped out in faith and
Hundreds of people
Wow.
did everything they could do to stop him.
How did he actually get in, though? I mean,
Well, he says, "I'm going to pick up a camera and start taking pictures." And so I helped him get a camera, and so he started taking pictures. And then he goes, "I want to get into politics." This is over a period of like last 2 years. Get into taking pictures of politics. So he went to political events in Arizona, and he started taking pictures. He sent them to the people. They started getting published. He just got awarded he just got 2 awards for the #1 photographer of the 2 different candidates.
that's amazing.
It is amazing. And that was after he was already up there. And the people in Washington had heard about him in Arizona taking the pictures of the Arizona candidates.
So if you have a vision, it would behoove you, I guess, to take a step toward that. Just baby step, baby step, baby step. And honor.
And you know what my advice was as an apostle to him?
What?
Get out of debt.
Yes.
And he says, we just have a couple more car payments and we're out of debt. And I said, that is wisdom before you embark on, you don't want to get in any more debt and be drowning in debt.
Right.
And that goes to everybody who's listening, is that the goal is to get out of debt and even believe God to get your house paid off, and start taking steps for something you've always wanted to do.
I love it. Well, Miss Joan Hunter, I want to thank you so much for joining us again on Divine Intervention Radio. So great to have you back. Her 2 latest books, again, Love Again, Live Again, Restore Your Heart and Regain Your Health, and also The Power of Prophetic Vision. You can find her at JoanHunterMinistries.org.
JoanHunter.org.
JoanHunter.org. Very simple. JoanHunter.org. Thank you so much, Joan. Great to see you.
Thank you. God bless.
All right.
Thanks.
You're listening to Divine Intervention with Daniel Fazina, and we'll return in just a moment.
I believe in miracles.
Hey, this is Daniel Fazina of Divine Intervention Radio. Jesus calmed a raging storm, healed paralytics, and even raised the dead. But are these types of events still happening today? The answer to this question, as you will see from reading my book, Divine Intervention, 50 True Stories of God's Miracles Today, is an emphatic yes. Contained within the book is a collection of amazing true stories that attest to this fact. More information about Divine Intervention, 50 True Stories of God's Miracles Today can be found at divineinterventionradio.com.
Hi, I'm Kevin McCullough. You may know me from Fox News or Talk Radio. Have you ever wondered or pondered the idea of working for yourself or owning your own business? Using your skills to build a vision or a passion for your own life? Think about it. No boss, no politics, no compromise, no commute, no employees, no discrimination, and no educational requirements. Just building something positive that impacts people's lives. Well, you can get started owning your own energy company for less than $500. Would you like to know how? It's through a great company called Ambit. You can find out more when you go to freepowernow.com. That's freepowernow.com. Or if you're really interested in getting started, Call my good friend Daniel Fazina, an independent energy consultant with Ambit. He's ready to help you get started on a brand new career. 205-55-AMBIT. That's 205-55-AMBIT or freepowernow.com.
Hi, I'm Lee Strobel, author of The Case for Christ and The Case for Miracles. You're listening to Divine Intervention Radio with Daniel Fazina.
Welcome back to Divine Intervention Radio. I am your host, Daniel Fazina. Thank you so much for joining us. If you're just tuning in, we have been speaking with two very powerful women of God. Before the break, we heard from my good friend, Joan Hunter, who has a healing ministry where she travels all around the world and sees miraculous healings and all sorts of amazing deliverances and things like that through her ministry. You can find her at joanhunter.org. And now on this half of the show, I'd like to introduce you to a new friend that I met at the National Religious Broadcasters Convention. Her name is Missy Worton, and she is the author of Don't Mess With This Mama, which is an amazing true story of how she went to Ethiopia to adopt her daughter Favor and the perils and dangers that ensued there and how the Lord protected her and brought a happy conclusion to the story. Let me tell you a little bit about Missy before we introduce her. Missy Worton is an author, speaker, former actress, singer, dancer in a nationally faith-based Broadway-style music company dealing with family and faith issues. She writes across media not only as an author but also as a film and television writer. She exudes joy in all she does, and she loves being in God's presence as a worshiper. Missy's church ministry involvements have included leading worship as well as being in children's and women's ministries. And Missy's greatest desire is to awaken women to the superpower they have within them as a daughter of a mighty and loving God, encouraging them to fearlessly and courageously pursue the greatness and dreams they were created for by fulfilling their unique destiny calling. I interviewed Missy live on site at the National Religious Broadcasters Convention in Nashville, Tennessee. So again, please excuse the background noise, but I think you're really going to be encouraged by her powerful testimony. So let's get to Missy Worton right now on Divine Intervention Radio. Missy, you are on Divine Intervention Radio. Thank you so much for joining us.
So glad to be here. I love this.
Well, great. You know, we love talking about miracle stories and testimonies of how the Lord has intervened in people's lives, and you have quite a life with many of those, and your new book is called Don't mess with this mama.
It is.
We definitely want to get to that. But before we do, take us to the beginning a little bit. Tell us, who is Missy Worton, and how did you come to faith in Jesus in the first place?
You know, I was blessed enough to be raised in a family that introduced me to Christ early on. Okay. And so, but I will say this, until I got into my 30s, I didn't have a relationship. I knew who God was, and I knew all the rules, but I didn't have a relationship. And it was a shift in my paradigm when I really came to have a relationship with Jesus Christ and make Him Lord of my life. And it changed me, because I no longer was in fear, living in fear. I wanted to do things because I loved Jesus. I loved who the Father was. I loved who the Holy Spirit was. And I just wanted to be entangled with them.
That's wonderful. So, Missy, how did this change in your paradigm take place? What happened to change you from just knowing about God to having a relationship with Him?
Well, I actually was looking around me, and I realized that a lot of people weren't going out there and doing what God had actually asked us to do, to help others, to step in, to pray for another person for healing. And they were just living a comfortable life, and they looked a lot like the world, and I realized I did too. And that's not what I wanted to do. I knew I was created for greatness. I knew I was a child of the King, and I wanted to live a life out that made impact, and to live out a destiny that I knew that the Father had called me to since the beginning of my life.
So when you made that choice to actually follow Him and do these things, how did your life change? What looked different from then?
Well, I became to be more aware of needs around me. And I would reach out to strangers in different places because I felt that they needed some help. And every time I would approach someone and ask them, just, is there anything I could do to help you? You genuinely minister to strangers, unaware. And I know some of them had to be angels, but I would just bless them. And it's amazing what happens inside of you when you reach out to try to live your life for others and not for yourself. And just, what can I get for me? It's, no, what can I do to better the life of that individual over there?
I love that. Jesus talked about, if you want to save your life, you have to lose it for the gospel and my sake. And obviously, when you give your life away, you realize that you gain so much more. So I definitely appreciate that about you. And as your life went on, you somehow got into wanting to adopt a child from Ethiopia, and you actually wrote a book about it. It's called Don't Mess with This Mama, and you had quite an ordeal trying to get your daughter from Ethiopia and having to rescue her several times. Tell us about that. First of all, how did it come to you, and then what's the story behind it?
Okay, well, I didn't grow up actually wanting to adopt. It was something that God moved on my heart to help these children. And they were older children. We've adopted 2 from Ethiopia, and they were both over 6 years old when we adopted them. They're called waiting children because nobody is picking them up. So Favor, which is the daughter that this book is about, we had adopted her. We had gone through all the court system. We had passed court, and in between the time where we passed court and when we got to go back to do our embassy appointment, she was taken out of the orphanage and put in a foster care that looked more like child slavery. And so when we knew that, they told us, don't come and get her, you're not going to see her. Just go ahead and pick another child. There was no way this mama was going to do that. And so we boarded a plane, and it was literally one of the last planes out before Hurricane Sandy slammed into the U.S., and it was in 2012. We flew into Ethiopia and did a rescue mission to bring her out of this foster care. And of course, my husband and I didn't. We stayed back in the hotel, but they brought her to us and immediately said, you need to get her out as soon as possible.
Now, when you say a rescue mission, you mean guys with guns went in and raided the place and just took her out, or how did that happen?
No, actually, in Ethiopia, if there's a living relative, they can go in and demand that child be given over to them. So there has to be a living relative. Well, the living relative to Favor there was one aunt, and she did not want Favor to grow up in this slavery situation. She wanted her to go to America to have a good life and be loved by a family. And so she actually got out of the hospital and drove up there and picked her up and demanded her.
Wow. And so she was in the hospital herself?
She was in the hospital, yeah. She had a sickness there that's very, very common in Ethiopia that will take you out.
Wow, that's amazing. So you do this rescue, you finally get her, and then I understand a lot of stuff happened. You actually had to go into hiding. What took place after that?
Right. Something shifted in the orphanage that we were, not the orphanage, but the agency that we were working with. And suddenly they didn't want us to leave with her and leave Ethiopia. So they started spreading it around to people to grab her from us and not allow us to leave the country. So when we flew out, we went to the airport, and at immigration, they stopped us. This man had so much power. He used to be a federal court judge that he reached in and actually claimed that we had done something wrong, that we were human traffickers, me and my husband. So they surrounded us. They took her visa and her passport, and we could go nowhere because if we left, we knew this person would get her, and if we knew we had to stay. So we stayed. They told us to go into hiding because there were a lot of people that wanted to grab her, to keep her there. And I had a friend, and she was in the middle of a radical Islam area in Addis Ababa, Ethiopia. It was a Christian academy that was set there that Islam had come in and built around it. Literally, there were 4 mosques around it. So every morning we would wake up 4 a.m. to the call to prayer. It's one of those times where you just really wish that they had a prerequisite to singing voices.
I love it.
It's on the bullhorn. It was a hard thing. But in that, while we went to this one compound, I remember her calling, and she said, listen, you could come here and stay. And this was a miracle because they had gotten there 1 month beforehand. And that wasn't supposed to happen. She said, I know why we're here. It's to help you out. And that just so happens that there's an apartment here that you can rent and just stay. The apartment was $14 a day in Ethiopia. So it was in our price range. And
gotta love that, how the dollar goes so far over there, right?
It does. So we stayed there, and there was literally so many miracles that happened from when we got stopped by immigration. We knew nobody in Ethiopia, and out of the blue, we have at least 13 agents around us, immigration agents, and out of the blue, I hear someone say, Missy Worton? And I'm thinking, who knows me in Ethiopia? And I turn around to see a woman. Her daughter had lived next door to us with our next door neighbors. And so my daughter in America. Yeah. So she said, listen, when she saw that she didn't understand what they were doing, she said, here is my phone. You can use it in Ethiopia. My daughter just dropped me off, the one that lived right next door to you. So she called her immediately. She came and got us, took us to a Christian home where we had a place to stay that night and go into hiding the next day.
I know, what were they doing in Ethiopia?
She helped with an orphanage. So she was over there for about 3 months, and that's it.
That's amazing. So how long were you in hiding in Ethiopia?
We were in hiding about 3, almost 4 weeks.
And then how did you miraculously get your daughter back?
Well, we kept her with us. We were told by a person that did covert operations, they said, do not let her out of your sight or you'll never see her again. And so we kept her close by, and if we weren't with her, we had a man that was like a bodyguard to watching her. So that's what we did there. There was one night, because we were surrounded by radical Islam, and Benghazi had just happened. This is 2012, and it was in October, September. It just happened. So we're in an 8-acre compound that had 8 armed guards. I never understood why we had 8 armed guards until we drove into the complex and realized we're in the middle of radical Islam. Well, they were all out in the streets. It was about 2 o'clock in the morning. I put on some music by Kimberly and Alberto Rivera, and I just started worshiping, because you're supposed to just worship when my heart couldn't go where my fear was trying to go, so I just needed to lay it down because I couldn't battle this. And every negative thought came against me when I when I realized the situation we could be in. And the Lord took me up and showed me how angels were all around the complex. These were 9-foot tall angels that were facing out. They were beautiful and very aware of their surroundings. They never looked at me. But then at one point he drew me back to the front gate. And keep in mind, this is our first night there. So I saw everything surrounding us. And that's no way I could have known what was surrounding us. I looked up, and there was this massive angel. Some people said it was Gabriel. Some people say it was a host angel. But all I know is his knee came to the place of a third-story gymnasium in the complex. So he was massive. I didn't know there were angels that big. So when I saw him, I realized, and I immediately wept, because I realized my God was his creator. And I didn't worship him, but I worshiped the God who had created this being, who was there for such a time as this for us. And at that point, all fear left me. There was no fear. When you know who's standing with you versus who is against you, there is no fear, because you know that God is so much mightier. He is so much stronger than anything that we face in the natural.
That's amazing. And this was your first night in hiding.
This is our first night in hiding, and I told my husband about 3 days later we were exploring the complex. It was the first time we had to explore this 8-acre complex. And I said, let's go look at the river that's behind the complex. And my husband looked at me, he goes, how would you know there's a river back there? And I went, because I saw it in my vision. And so I literally ran to where I saw it, and there it was. It was right there.
I love it. This is beautiful. Friend, you're listening to Divine Intervention Radio. I'm your host, Daniel Fazina, and we're visiting with our special guest, Missy Worton. She is the author of Don't Mess with This Mama. And she's telling about her story of adopting her daughter and being surrounded by radical Islam and trying to get out. Now, Missy, how did you actually escape the country when all these people were looking for you?
Well, you know, we went through they suggested that we go through the proper channels. So we had to go back into court and prove our case that we were not human traffickers, that they had lied about us and falsely accused us of things that were not true. And thank God we had a judge that was a woman who was unmoved by anyone else. She was going to decide this case based on the facts. And if they didn't give her facts, then she was deciding for us. But she decided on our behalf, and she lost a lot because she decided for us, because this man had a lot of power. So
when you say she lost a lot, what happened to her?
Well, she was within 2 months of deciding our case, she was taken out from being the judge over adoption and placed in another area.
Sometimes you do lose a lot and you suffer for doing the right thing, but I praise God for people who have the courage to do it. That's wonderful. So tell us about your book, Don't Mess with This Mama. What is it about, and why did you write it?
Well, at first I didn't want to write it. I really battled it. And then finally the Lord just dealt with me and said, it's not your story, it's my story. And as I wrote every chapter, I think I told you before, I would read the chapter and see where his hand of provision was there, how he was there miraculously, even when I didn't see him. And when I was thinking we were alone, we were hopeless, there he was in the pages, because I write very authentically. And so when I went back to read it, I realized you were there all along. This miracle that we experienced was put into action 3 years ago. In fact, one of the miracles happened before we ever went to get favor. I went to go see Chris Overstreet. Chris Overstreet is evangelist, was in Father of Lights. And I was there, and he spotted me in the crowd. He pointed to me and had me stand up, and he gave me a word of encouragement or a prophecy. And in the prophecy, he just said, I just see a golden path before you, and favor, favor, favor. And he said, you need to hold on to 2 scriptures. God is saying you need to hold on to these as strong as you can. Ephesians 3:20 and Philippians 1:6. And so more than I could ask or hope for, that he will be faithful to complete what he started. So those are the things I'm holding on to. And at the front, my front cover of the book, we decided to put a sword in my hand because it was the Word of God that won this battle. That's what it was. It wasn't a strong mama. It was a mama that was holding on to the Word of God with all she had. And that's who did it. And but here's the amazing thing. We were 2 hours late because of Hurricane Sandy when we came into our hotel. And I sat down as my husband was checking in. And who walked out of the elevator but Chris Overstreet?
What? In Ethiopia?
In Ethiopia. So he comes over and he goes, "Are you stuck here too because of Hurricane Sandy?" And I said, "Nope, we're here to rescue our daughter." And he said, "Well, then we need to pray about this." Well, here's the amazing thing. They were not supposed to land in Ethiopia. They had just been with Heidi Baker in Mozambique and Uganda area on a missions trip. On their way back, they were supposed to land in Rome. In the middle of their flight, the pilot comes on and says, "We're sorry, we have no room in Rome, so we are taking you to Addis Ababa, Ethiopia."
Oh my goodness! Now, did Chris Overstreet? Did he remember you?
He did. I tell you what. Well, I don't know that he remembered me that well because he sees a lot of people. But since then, we've become friends. He actually wrote my foreword because I said I think people need to know what it took to get you in front of me. Because when he started praying over our situation, he literally prayed victory over us, and he didn't know our daughter's name was Favor, and his prayer was something to the effect of, "Lord, I just see favor walking before him, and Lord, I know that you are giving them favor in this divine moment, in this divine act." He says her name like 4 times, and finally I start giggling, and he looks up at me. He said, "Did I say something?" And I said, "Did I tell you her name was Favor?" And he goes, "No, that is awesome." He said, "I just kept hearing God say, tell them they are going to get favor." And
I love it. Even when the first time he met you, and prophesied favor, even 3 times. That's very significant too. Now I have to ask you this: did you name your daughter Favor, or did she come with that name?
Well, she originally was named Fevon, and I changed that right away to Favor. Her name didn't have a good meaning in Ethiopia, and I wanted to give her the name of Favor, that God's favor was on her through the rest of her life. She would do great things for God, and she is a world changer.
I'm so encouraged. This is such an amazing story, and I thank you so much, Missy Worton, for sharing it with us on Divine Intervention Radio. Friend, I want to encourage you to pick up her book. It's called Don't Mess With This Mama, and it's all about her story. It's full of miracles and divine interventions, and I think it's really going to encourage you and boost your faith. So again, Missy Worton, thank you so much for joining us on Divine Intervention. So appreciate you.
Well, thank you for having me. Thank you for hearing my story.
Amen. All right, thank you so much for joining us. That about does it for another exciting episode of Divine Intervention. We're going to put those links to Missy Worton's books and Joan Hunter's books on our website, divineinterventionradio.com, so you can go there to check them out. And God willing, we'll see you again next time. Take care and God bless.
You've been listening to Divine Intervention with your host, Daniel Fazina. You can email Daniel at divineintervention@mail.com. That's divineintervention@mail.com. All programs of Divine Intervention are available online at divineinterventionradio.com. That's divineinterventionradio.com. Join us next time here on Divine Intervention.
I believe in miracles.
Hey, this is Daniel Fazina of Divine Intervention Radio. The Bible contains some incredible stories of miracles and divine interventions. Jesus calmed a raging storm, healed paralytics, and even raised the dead. But are these types of events still happening today? The answer to this question, as you will see from reading my book, Divine Intervention, 50 True Stories of God's Miracles Today, is an emphatic yes. Contained within the book is a collection of amazing true stories that attest to this fact. You will read the astonishing first-hand accounts of people who have been healed of paralysis, terminal cancer, and tumors through prayer. You will see the love of God powerfully transform the life of an Islamic terrorist. You will witness the liberation of the demon-possessed, the resurrection of the dead, and much more. Prepare to be awed and inspired as you experience divine intervention. More information about Divine Intervention, 50 True Stories of God's Miracles Today can be found at www.divineinterventionradio.com or by calling 800-247-4784. That's 1-800-247-4784. Divine Intervention is supported by the Other Perspective Media recording artist, poet Billy Lamont. Poetry, music, publishing, art, Jesus. More information about poet Billy Lamont's CDs, books, and Other Perspective Media can be found at www.billylamont.com.